And welcome to On TV, and we are very excited to be talking about an issue that's really in the news a lot right now, what with the negotiations of the NAFTA agreement and our big deadline for Friday. One of the big contentious issues for Canadians is the dairy supply and supply management system. So we're going to talk to some farmers who, Patrick Connolly is a generational dairy farmer?
Second generation.
Second generation. So you grew up on this farm and you bought it from your mom and dad?
Yeah, I just bought it last year from them.
So, you know, in my history in Northern Ontario, I've always heard how tough of a life it is to be a farmer. Why do you do this?
You just love it. I love animals. I love working with the cattle. I love the field work and the people.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sandra Holmberg, you might recognize. She was with us a couple of times during the political debates and so forth. Good to see you again, Sandra. Now, you're a farmer. You're not a dairy farmer, but your family-in-law had been. Is that how?
They retired from dairy in 1993. Now we're just trying to find our niche as farmers. But for me, I work in ag as it is. I work for the Echo Bay Cooperative. Algoma Ag Center, so I'm concerned with those dealings, but yeah, so we're trying to find our way, and that's the thing that segues into the supply management system, because it's difficult for people to understand that, but it's also difficult for them to grasp what the benefits are to them as a consumer. So it's important that they know that these types of production adaptations are actually benefiting them, and it's really difficult for us as advocates, if you've heard that term before.
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's it's a lot of people getting their news from social media, and you got to be leery of that, right? So yeah, you got to hear it from the source, and hopefully that's what you'll hear, and get it at kind of a grassroots level of what supply management. The definition is the basics.
Why don't you give us that? What is the definition? Who's the expert? I hear you're the numbers guy.
I'm the numbers guy, yes.
You just got the nod.
Yeah.
Supply management.
Supply management. It's just meeting supply with demand. Processors let us know how much milk they need. We fill it. They need less. We sell less. They need more. We produce more for them. It just keeps the price stable, keeps everything level. Farmers get a fair price for it. Consumers get a fair price for it, and processors make a bit in the middle.
And then everybody knows what everybody needs and supports each other.
Yeah, it's all just a team effort to make sure prices don't fluctuate and everyone gets a fair share of the pie when it comes from the customers.
Right. So NAFTA, you know, it's been in the news for a year. Getting down to the nitty-gritty now, dairy is a huge issue with the negotiations. How come?
Basically because we don't import any milk. To keep the supply steady, we don't allow any imports from any other country. Well, we allow a small amount of imports, but we have a very high tariff wall that prevents them from coming in, just so our supply doesn't fluctuate outside our control. United States would like to have more access to it. It's usually a contentious issue whenever we have a trade agreement. We've slowly been allowing more and more access to it, but NAFTA would like just us to eliminate it completely and have an open market.
With regards to that, you have President Trump and his negotiators talking about the 300% tariff that the Canadians have put on us for years and years, and it's wrong. And speak to that a little bit.
That number is correct. There's a 300% tariff. That's after we allow 10% access to our market. So they can get in the first 10% without any of the tariff on. It's only after that that the 300% applies. And it's not 300% for across the board. There's certain products that are 300, some are less, some are more. 300's the top one, so they always quote the top one.
Now, with regard, Sandra, to the government, and you know, some critics are talking about how Prime Minister Trudeau's been a little bit soft on these negotiations, put us at a disadvantage to a certain point because Mexico's already got an agreement with the United States. Are you trusting the government? Are you sure the government is going to take care of dairy farmers and farmers in general?
I think that, it's a tumultuous time, especially like you said with the Mexico dealing, but I think the government has stated, and we can, put our hope in the fact that they are leaving supply management as is, And I think we should take that at face value right now. And I think if they're backing us that way, then I think we should back them in return. And I think that we should take that as is. And I mean, you know, there's a lot of rhetoric, and that comes with politics.
Fear-mongering.
Yeah, obviously, things like that. So that's difficult, and I mean, they're catering and appealing to consumers. You know, well, don't you want, you know, a change? And they're trying to say that, you know, your price will get better. Well, we have the highest safety standards for milk in the world, so you don't want to lose that. Trust me, because little by little, we're compromising our quality of food. And it's going to get to the point where we will not be self-sustainable whatsoever, and we're going to be reliant on outside sources across the board.
And I think that that's something that in the future, a lot of people, farmers included, I would imagine, are thinking about. We have to learn to self-sustain. We have to develop our own energy sources and our own food sources. And, you know, like you said, you deal in eggs, and that's part of the NAFTA agreement too. All of the produce is part of it.
Yeah. I mean, the way we eat and the population, and we're trying to feed, you know, farmers are only 2% of the population, trying to feed, you know, just an exorbitant amount of people.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're always, it seems like we're up against a wall. And, you know, there's, you know, fads, or it's trendy to do the 100-mile challenge. And, you know, it trickles down, and little by little, if you can manage that, then that's great. If you can't, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, your food is on the top of the hierarchy of needs.
Yes, so absolutely. Patrick, some people, especially today, I found in the news, are talking about how chances are Canadians, Chrystia Freeland is going to have to make some concessions with regards to the dairy industry. In your mind, is there a concession that would be acceptable?
In my mind, no, I wouldn't want one. But the belief is there probably will be some. Most trade agreements have allowed more access to it. The government at the point right now is saying if the states want more access to Canada's milk market, get back on with the TPP, which they have access to through then, and don't try and do it through NAFTA.
Right.
But if she does make any concessions, it'll probably be more likely just more access, but we're all hoping that's not the case.
So tell us on a personal level, any kind of restrictions or tariffs put on the dairy industry from someone like yourself, how will that affect you on a personal level? How will that affect the farmer and his family?
On a personal level, if they allow more access, it always brings the price we get for our milk down. It puts it more on the world price and less price we can make. So every time they hammer away a little more, we get less. And also we are allowed to ship less, so you get to produce less milk. So you take a hit both ways when they allow more access to the market.
And Sandra, it's tough because some critics, some pundits are saying that, you know, if there is a trade agreement and dairy has to take a couple of dings, the price will go down for consumers. Is that a bad thing?
Like I said, you're compromising quality for that as well. And on a personal level now, we are here to put faces to the names, to the, you know, societal issues that are happening, because I think a lot of people are under the impression that you know, the dairy industry is one big titan, a conglomerate, and it's not. It's several smaller family farms.
You're our neighbors. You're down the road.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's important to have you guys in to talk about it, because it helps to raise the education level of people in a community that might not have a clue of what it's like to be a farmer in 2018.
Yes.
Having grown up on one, is it extremely different now?
It is definitely extremely different from the way we were as kids growing up. And on the farm, there's more work. There's labor's harder to find. You used to find kids all the time that just wanted to help. You can't find the people who want to help you anymore. The margins are way narrower than they used to be. Like, you used to be able to make a living off 23 cows. That'd be an average size, and now 70 is closer to the average size. Like, it's just, your margins get shorter and shorter. And as just to go back to the comment on the prices coming down, that's not likely to happen. Australia and EU, where they both deregularized and got rid of quota, the price didn't drop. It actually went up afterwards. So even without supply management, you're likely to get a bigger increase because then there's no control over the processors, what they charge and pay out. So they'll just take a bigger chunk and charge it, pass it on to the consumers.
There's always that ripple effect.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to make the point that you talk about the Canadian quality. We can as consumers rely on that, and I think that sometimes we take that for granted because we have such high standards. We know that our milk is good milk.
Yeah, yeah, and we're, you know, we just keep doing it little by little, and you know, the propaganda is, you know, ebbs and flows, and you don't even realize as a consumer it's happening. Mm-hmm. And lots of people are really trying to educate themselves on what they're putting into their bodies and what they're eating. And again, you're grasping at straws for information. Where do you get your information, and is it accurate? So that's where it comes to
Always be objective
pass.
and informed. Thank you both so much for coming in on this today. Really appreciate it. It's nice to see the next generation of farmers in Algoma, and we appreciate your time
Thank you.
today.
Thank you.
We'll be back on TV.